Today's episode is sponsored by Planning Center, the best way to plan, schedule, and resource your teams for your upcoming services. Here's a little tip about Planning Center that you may not know. You can use Planning Center to schedule multiple types of services throughout your church. So for example, at our church, we just recently started scheduling our high school students, our college age, our Spanish teams, and our kids teams, along with our main sanctuary teams, which we've always done. And this allows us to share musicians incredibly easily. And so because everyone is on Planning Center, if I try to schedule a high school student in the main sanctuary who's already being used in the high school room, it will notify me that there is a scheduling conflict and I'll have to find a different plan. And it'll even offer suggestions of who I could use instead. And the same is true for them. If they see that I'm not using one of my electric guitar players, they can use Planning Center to schedule that person for the high school room. So it's really allowed us to share our musicians throughout the church. It's created a sense of unity and cohesion and has really just bolstered the fact that we are one team of musicians who serve our church regardless of what venue it's in. So check that feature out if you haven't. There's about 1 billion other things that Planning Center can do. And if you're not using it yet, you're wasting hours and hours of your life on unnecessary administration. So check out Planning Center. It is free for 30 days, and you can check all of that out at planning.center, planning.center. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Worship Ministry Training Podcast. My name is Alex Infiegin, your host. Thank you so much for being a listener to this podcast, however long you've been listening. I'm grateful that you would allow me to speak whatever little knowledge I have into your eardrums every month. And so thanks for being a part of this. And if you're a new listener, thanks for joining. I hope you'll be helped by today's episode, and I hope you'll dig through the archive list and check out what we've talked about in the past over the last 5 years, because we've tried to cover a bunch of topics that are going to help you in your worship ministry walk. So today we're going to try something different. I want to try a different format for the podcast from time to time where, I don't know about you, but I'm very helped when I get to just sit down and talk with other worship pastors or worship leaders and be like, how do you do it at your church? What about this? What about this topic? What about these problems? How do you handle this? And I love just hearing their wisdom and their insight. And so from time to time, I'm going to go talk to churches who are further ahead of me and maybe further ahead of you, and we can learn together from them on how they do their ministry, how they structure their ministry. And so first up in this kind of new format is Crossroads Church in Ohio. This is a gigantic church. It's bigger than a city. It's 35,000 people attend this church on a weekly basis. And so I sit down with Robbie and Justin to talk about their ministry and how they structure things and how they raise up enough musicians to cover that many campuses that they have. And then we also talk about their new single, God of the Breakthrough, which I will link in the show notes because it's a really cool song that you guys can check out and potentially introduce to your church. So let's get into this conversation with the guys from Crossroads Church. Hey everybody, I am here with Robbie and Justin from Crossroads Church in Cincinnati. This is a gigantic church of like 35,000, which should be really interesting to dig in. Robbie and Justin, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, tell us how long you've been at the church on staff and what your roles are there.
Yeah, hey, my name's Robbie, and I oversee the worship and music, Robbie Ryder at Crossroads, and we've been here at Crossroads for about 11 years, but friends with Crossroads for probably 16 years. Yeah, just lots of connections even before we were a part of the community officially and on staff.
Yeah, and my name is Justin Mosteller, and I'm one of the new guys. So I've been on staff only about 8 months, but my wife and I have been worshiping here, part of the community, for a little over 2 years now, or right at 2 years. And so worshiped here in the community, friends with the community for like a decade as well. Like had friends that have worked there over time and loved what this church was doing in our city for a long time, and then worshiping there for 2 years, and now on the team in a staff capacity for 8 months.
Cool. And what exactly do you do there,
I'm
Justin?
the worship pastor at our Oakley campus.
So you guys are a multi-site church. How many sites do you guys have?
So we have 12 physical sites. That means a live worship experience with a broadcast message coming into that space. The rooms range from 3,500 seats to 150 seats. And then we also have a what we call Crossroads Anywhere, and that's our digital community. And so from a digital community standpoint, there is a slightly modified broadcast done that goes out to that community. And so there are loads and loads of very small communities that have a completely, from beginning to end, digital experience, and do that in living rooms or community houses or rec centers or movie theaters happening all around the country.
Mm-hmm. Talk about your worship ministry in general. Like, how many people are involved total? Like, let's limit it to just musicians and singers at this point. We won't talk about technical audio. Like, how many people are involved serving in your church in that area?
Justin and I were chatting this just before we jumped on the call with you. And unless we got into Planning Center and went through and started, not obviously, but we use Planning Center, and we also use the Bible. And it's Planning Center, I'm joking. But Planning Center is a big part of what we do. We didn't go in and count, but my guess is between all of those 12 campuses and volunteers, it's somewhere between 100 and 125 musicians that are spread out across a couple different states and a few hundred miles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that averages to like 10 people per site, really? I mean, if you've got 120, 125, and you've got 12 sites, obviously that's a rough average because some of them are going to be more populated in one area. So does that mean your volunteers are serving every single week in some of the locations? Like it's one band and they're on all week long?
So at some of our smaller campuses, they may do 2 services on a Sunday morning versus some of our larger campuses are doing 4 or 5 services over a weekend. And so the capacity of someone who serves all weekend at 4 or 5 services, that person might play 2 times a month, maybe once a month. So I would say that the number of volunteers is sort of proportional to the size of the community.
Mm-hmm. Justin, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think we all try to help our volunteers have healthy rhythms. And it's different at each of our sites. We've got a site that's their team's made up of a lot of young college age or just out of college men and women, and then a site like my team is older folks on the team that have kids in high school, some out of high school. We've got then guys and girls who are having young families. And so it's always trying to give them healthy balance and helping them because they have families, they have jobs outside of what we're asking them to do. And at the end of the day, we're about people rather than what they can give to us,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. You're looking out for your people. You're not burning them out. And I would encourage all the listeners to really consider that as well with your scheduling. Now, just being honest, 125 out of 35,000 in attendance. And I know a lot of those people are watching online and stuff, but that seems like there's not a huge number of people involved in music. Is that because your standards are really high? Or honestly, we have about the same amount of people involved in ours as well, about 120, 125 people. That's kind of including tech as well. So we don't have a huge number of volunteers for the size of our church as well. What is it, do you think, that, has limited that number? Is that intentional, or is that just kind of the way it's fallen?
I would say a lot of it has to come with how fast we've grown. So when I showed up 11 years ago, we were probably around 7,000 people, one campus. When we jumped into multi-site, we had a plan for 1 or 2 other campuses. And then it was really apparent that there were opportunities that were presented, and we just thought, wow, the Lord is giving us an opportunity to buy this old school. They offered it to us for a steal, Well, gosh, that's another campus we didn't plan for or budget for. We didn't have a leadership pipeline for. So that one came online super fast. And then we launched 2 campuses in one year that we didn't plan on because the opportunities were there. So I would say, one, we're playing catch up, to be totally honest. We're playing catch up. And the other part is, I think we've had really outdated mechanisms for getting people involved. I would say we want things to be great. And when we do that, it communicates unintentionally that there's not a need. So people just go, oh, well, there's always a band up there. They look like they're doing fine. And they don't know that that's the 4th drummer we called.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's an aspect of us making opportunities for people to get involved. And I will say this too, this is confession. Our best efforts up until maybe 2 years ago looked like this. we had a link on our website that said, hey, if you want to get involved, we would love to have you submit an audition. And they would send in a video, or they'd throw it up on YouTube. And then we would then send them some tracks, and we would say, hey, here's some of our original music. Learn this stuff. And then you're going to come into our studio. If you're a drummer, Alex, let's say you're the drummer, I'd be, Alex, great to have you. We pulled up this song called Psalm 31. We muted all the drums. Here comes the click. Here comes the prompts. And you play the song verbatim. And it's me and a handful of other people sitting on the other side of the glass while someone comes into the studio, which may be a completely new environment for them. And they run this gauntlet, right? And what an intimidating process for someone to come in. Once they did that, they would come in and jump in on a rehearsal with us. They would watch our rehearsal, and then they would come in and sub out for our drummer. But it was not a good process. It meant we said no because it was such a high bar. We said no to 97% of the people, you know? Mm-hmm. And how am I to know that that's the person's skill or nerves or heart or, you know, any of those things? So in the last 2 years, we've created a new process that does a couple things. It lowers the bar, and it also gives a much longer runway for people to acclimate, for us to discern where they're at. We call it worship training, and Justin's a big part of that. Justin, will you talk about worship training?
Yeah, it was one of the things that when I came in, it had been about 1.5 years old, and it happens at 2 of our sites, our Oakley campus and then our Mason campus, which is another top 3 or 4 in attendance as far as size-wise campuses. And it's a very intentional development process for musicians. And so you still audition for that, for worship training. You come in, audition. But like Robbie said, the bar's a little lower than what it used to be because we're not going to throw you right on stage on a weekend the next week. We're going to say, hey, where are you at? Where's your starting level? And establish that, and then go. This development process is really built to get you, say, from G to P on the musician scale rather than A to Z, right? And so if we establish, oh, this is where you're starting, great. Then we bring you into our program, and it happens about kind of like in 4 quarters each year, maybe 8 to 12 week sessions. And basically we have people in training at every role in a band. That's a normal role for our, normal weekend band. So you might have 3 drummers, 3 keys players, 3 electric guitars, 2 bass players, 4 vocalists, something like that. And then we have a coach that's from our weekend team, and the coach is basically, they're a step ahead. They're not necessarily experts, but they're a step ahead in the process of those people. And they're all in with our culture, with our team, our values, and they're there to coach. And so those people who are in training, we give them 2 songs each week. And every Thursday night they come in from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And it is just, hey, get up as a band, play the song, and then we're going to give you on-the-spot coaching and training and feedback. And it's going to be done in love, but it's going to be done directly, so you don't have to wonder, did I play that right? No, there's a guitar coach that's going, hey, what if you did this? I like what you did there, but what if you tried it this way? What if you did this? It's been great for us, and that's a way that we're trying to play this catch-up game to supply musicians to all of our sites.
Yeah, so you have 3 of each, let's just say 3 of each team member, and they'll get up and they'll play 2 songs, and then they'll rotate out, and then the next people will play 2 songs and then rotate out, and then you give coaching throughout that process?
Yeah, so a little tweak to that. It'd be like we have 2 songs each night, so we may do 5 or 6 reps with the first song, and you get up and that band plays the song once, and then there's coaching right after that. And then, hey, let's do it again. Let's take what we just gave you in coaching, apply it, do another rep. That's great. All right, let's switch out with another band member, give them a spot. Mm-hmm. Because there's great, one, you're applying feedback immediately, but you're also watching someone else do the thing that you were just doing, and you're learning from them. You're also going, oh, what if they did it like this? Or, oh, I didn't do it like that. That's great. That's really great. And that happens at every, we have a worship leaders in training, all of those things.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Like, that's kind of my dream. I would love that to happen here at our church. So when you do that, and it's like 8 to 12 week process, do they go through it until they're fully baked, or do they have to go through it again and again and again until they're ready? Or how do you know someone's ready, and then where do you plug them in?
It's definitely one of the pieces we're still tweaking, right? So we're taking, right now we're taking the summer off, and I have a leadership team with that. We're retooling and trying to figure out the best way, what's most effective. Right now we have people that have been in it for 2 years. And part of our philosophy of that has been, we're not only preparing you for a weekend service, we're also preparing you for, hey, our prison ministry needs a live band next month. Oh, this band could do really well in that setting. For me, as worship leader development, I have, hey, I've got a men's group of 25 guys that needs a worship leader. Oh, that would be great training for you to go do that. That's going to help you be a great weekend worship leader too, but it's different settings and things. So you could be in it as long as we see progressive, you're progressing forward. We continue to want to coach and develop you. Where it comes to a point where we go, oh, you're really hitting a wall. So like for a vocalist, I find it there most often. You're really hitting a wall. What you need now is a one-on-one vocal coach to really take you to the next level, because we can't get you to X, Y, and Z. We can get you to O or P on the scale. You know what I mean? Once we feel like somebody's ready, like, yeah, you're showing the values, you're showing the right heart of worship, and you're showing the skill level we want, then we put them in a thing called weekend trials. And so that's where we open them up to all of our sites, and we tell our other worship leaders, hey, this person's open for trials now. Here's what they're really strong at. Here's what they're going to need development at or coaching at when you have them in. And then our other sites have them in for a weekend and put them on the team is exactly what it's called. It's a trial weekend. So that worship leader then communicates with us on the back end. Hey, here's what they did really well. Oh man, here's what they missed. I was surprised that they missed this or whatever, I believe we do 3 to 5 of those before you can graduate. So before you ever graduate worship training, you've been on a weekend 3 to 5 times at different sites and different expressions of the community. And we've gotten direct feedback from those worship leaders that is really, really direct and super helpful,
Mm-hmm. This is amazing. Is this like a 3-month minimum to like, let's say 8 or 9 month process, like from start to finish?
Yeah, I think so. I think the average we would probably say would be in that 9 to 12 months thing, but no earlier than 3 months. We've had some great, especially lately, we've had like great drummers come through, and you can tell pretty quickly like, oh yeah, they get what we're doing. But man, it's still great for them because they're on our weekend stage in their training, in the training program on Thursday nights. For a lot of them, it's the first time they've ever used in-ears. For a lot of them, it's the first time they're triggering Ableton, things like that. So you can never have enough reps with that. And we want to give them the reps they need in worship training before we ever send them into a weekend so that they're set up to win. And they feel super confident when they go in for the weekend trials and are really encouraged in that,
Yeah, you're setting them up to succeed. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say that worship training isn't music lessons.
Right.
It's music coaching, right? And in it, we're focused on both the competency, like to do the things, and then the character. So part of like the process of being in training for a few months is this opportunity to see how we learn. We want to be learners all the way through. We want to be, hey, the Lord is always going to be pointing at stuff in our lives. He's never done with us. And so how someone does on stage is probably equal to how they are to hang in the green room. Like we have real conversations about what's going on in our lives. Like, what are we struggling with? What's the Lord doing? And we want our green rooms to be a place that are flourishing with authenticity and vulnerability. And so there are a lot of tiers in worship training, so there's a lot of shepherding. Because, oftentimes what we do with our music is sort of rooted in what's going on in our identity and what's going on in our hearts. And so when you're dealing with someone's skills, oftentimes those are really closely connected to their heart. And so I'm just really excited for how it's growing. Worship training is growing in our community. Like Justin said, it's only at 2 sites right now, and we'd like to see it roll out to more of our larger sites in the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, it's really rad. So how many people would you say are in your, let's just call it a worship academy, but worship training?
I think right now we're between 30 and 40 between both of our sites. You find out, it's like anything with your team. If you have 6 drummers, no one's going to be able to grow in that. We've got a roster that's there for when we graduate someone, great. Then here's the next person that will move up into training and things like that. And that list is considerably longer,
Yeah. Now, that's kind of one more question about this. Sorry, I really want to dig in because I think it's so helpful to, give people some real meat to hang on and be like, okay, I get this. Like, I could do this at my church. It might look different, but I could do this. How do you get people interested in worship training? How do you put the announcement out? Where does the information come from? Where do they hear about this thing?
So I would say from a couple different places. One, like the people in your band are going to attract people like them in your band. So one thing that is beautiful is that all of our band members are excited about more people getting involved. Right? There is very little territorialism or, most of our coaches are giving up an opportunity to play so that they can train other people to take their slots at some point. There's an excitement to reproduce themselves.
That's right.
So all of our people are really quick to go, oh, if somebody goes, hey, I really dug that song. Oh, cool. Are you a musician? That's a very natural question. What do you do? I kind of do this thing. Or I used to play in a band, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's proactive in one sense. Like, our band members and our worship team folks, they're the greatest advocates for new folks coming in. So we point people to the front door. If you want to see what our front door looks like, you can go to our website. It's crossroads.net/worship training. And so the whole thing starts there. And so everybody points everybody to that. Occasionally, we'll make an announcement at some of our smaller campuses. We'll make an announcement on the weekend. Hey, you see everybody up here? We know there's more of you out there. And you probably think, I'm not good enough, or, blah, blah, blah. Hey, check this out. We're gonna do an info session. Just meet us out there after church. We're gonna be hanging out. Just ask questions. And again, it points people back to worship training. It really does allow for people to hear truth, because I think sometimes in the music side of things, we're super concerned with people's hearts and hurting people. And I think that there's a truthfulness that has been missing in church culture around people's creativity that needs to be brought back. And so in worship training, in the orientation, I'll often talk about, if you're like, hey, I'm really good with kids. I served in a kids ministry at my old church for like 12 years, and I was just like the one they gave the babies to, and I was just great at it, and I just love them. And you're like, wow, well, it really sounds like you have a heart for working with kids. Great. So if you show up that weekend and I hand you a baby, and the baby isn't immediately soothed by and you get all stiff and wonky, and worse yet, if you drop the baby, chances are I'm going to go, hey, tell me about you work with kids, but you dropped a baby. Has anybody ever talked to you about that? And oh, no, it's fine. I never do that. I'm really good with kids. You see how this falls apart. And we would never give a kid to someone who drops babies, But yet there are people in music ministry all over the place that are like, I just have a heart for worship. I just want to do it. And they get up there and they drop the baby. And you're like, bro, it turns out you can't sing. Like, it's not your jam. Let's figure out what that is. And worship training is a great environment where those conversations happen. Like, it doesn't mean you can't sing, but you just sing below average, and that's, right. We have a threshold.
No one's ever told you that before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I get to be the jerk, the loving jerk that goes, but there is something. You were designed to reflect the beauty of God and glorify Him. So let's find out where that is.
Gosh, I love this. I'm so excited that you're doing that. And one thing I want to highlight is you guys had a process and you weren't afraid to say, this process is not working, and you scrapped it and you started over. And I did a similar thing to you guys. Like, when I first came here, I built this like elaborate online process because I was like, oh, all big churches have an online audition thing. So I built one for our church, and then like I got no results, like almost zero. And I was like, this is not working. So now, if it's helpful for the listeners, what I do now is I just literally, I get on stage. Like this last Sunday, I did this. And I kind of did what you guys did, or what you said, where you're like, hey guys, can we just thank the band for their faithful service every week? They're always, working so hard to do this for us. And so they all clapped. And then I said, hey, if you're a musician in the church, or if you're a singer, or if you are an audio engineer, or if you're interested in videography, like, I would love to meet you right after service. I'll just hop down off stage and I'll see you there. We'll connect. And so, I did that after each service, and I had like 8 people the first time, 6, and then 4, and I got their information, and I told them, hey, we're having our next worship collective. We do like quarterly training events, and we're having our next worship collective at, this coming Saturday. I'd love to see you there. And so for us, it looks like that. So it doesn't have to look the same in each church, but the concept is like, you want to invite everybody who's interested in. You want to speak the truth in love if they're not really ready, but you also want to have like a development pathway to help them grow. And then when they're ready, plug them into an appropriate level of service.
Right.
So
right.
I want to chat with something you said, Robbie. You had talked about the heart, and, in the green rooms, you're talking about spiritual things and crying and, praying. And, one of the things that I know people struggle with, and like I did a episode with Jeremy Riddle about this, how do we foster a more spiritual environment for our teams? Like, discipleship is the core of any ministry, like we're not called to make music, we're called to make disciples, right? And so how do you guys, with your 120 volunteers, like, and everyone's so busy, or I don't know how it is in Cincinnati, but in LA, it's busy, busy, busy. I'm pretty sure it's everywhere busy, busy, busy. But how do you disciple your team and foster just the spiritual side and the spiritual growth? Because for me, I focused so much the first 2 years that I've been here on the music because it needed to grow a lot. And now, like, they've almost defaulted to caring more about that than having, spiritual conversations or talking about how we worshiped instead of how we played, So how do you guys go about doing that?
It was something communicated to me early on when I came to Crossroads that I've been really deliberate about cultivating across the board, is that when I was brought onto staff, the guy that hired me said, Robbie, we want you on staff. We don't need you on staff. And my own personal brand of brokenness actually got my feelings hurt with that, because I wanted to come in and be a hero. And not knowingly, I didn't know I was being that way, but a mentor of mine said, Robbie, you have a problem. You've just been given a gift. They just want you. They don't need you. You have a Messiah complex or something. And I was like, oh, that hurts. But it really did speak to this, the core, which was this identity piece of, I wanted to come in and show that I was valuable. And what my friend Josh was saying, we find you valuable. We want you around here. The Lord says you're valuable, and that's good. And you don't need to work for it. And so the foundational way when somebody comes on, and as Justin talked about earlier, we want to be careful with people's time and make sure they have healthy balance, is this idea of like, hey, we want you here, but we don't want to need you in a way that we, the church staff, have a way of like gripping people tightly and holding on, saying, please don't leave. Please, we need you here. What are we going to do without you? What are we going to, and for us, we work really hard to say, we want you. We want this to be a blessing. We also want this to be a place where you get to give of what God has given you to give back. So it looks like being very open-handed with folks, I think at a very fundamental level. When someone says yes to 6 invitations, 6 in a row, we're like, hey, let's talk about that. You work a regular job and you've been here every weekend for 4 weeks, 5 weeks. How are we doing at home? Are you getting this right? The other piece is that we have a pretty clear expectation that the goal is not for people to be perfect. That to be a part of what we're doing, all you have to do is be fumbling towards Jesus. If there ever comes a point when serving gets in the way of you following Jesus, then let's just be real clear and take a pause. Or somebody will come, like there was a guy who played in a band, this was a couple years ago, he's like, Robbie, and this is in the green room with everybody, he said, Robbie, I was really been struggling with smoking weed, and I haven't smoked weed in a long time. And I was like, man, thanks for sharing, talk about that. And he's like, I haven't smoked for a long time, but I just had it in my nightstand. And I felt really convicted that I just had it there just in case I felt anxiety and in case, and the Lord really convicted me. And so, in that he was saying, I'm choosing Jesus over weed, and I look at that and I'm like, that's the best case scenario for him to go, I found something that was playing God in my life, but it wasn't God and it needed to go. Now, if he had said, Robbie, I'm totally fine with it. This is not a big deal for me. I've got it under control. That would have been a different conversation. But we want to foster people walking and trending towards the likeness, the character, and the competence of Jesus. That was a really long answer. I just feel like I rambled.
No, it's good. And so it sounds like a lot of those discipleship conversations are happening at church in the green room or during rehearsal or before rehearsal. Is that the case? Or are you guys like doing outside types of things or coffees or whatever to have those conversations as well?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I thought, man, I think I could be on the team here was because my first weekend on as a contractor / volunteer was like, I walked in our green room or was in our green room the whole weekend, and I was just leading a song or two or something. And I only knew Robbie, I think, on the team that weekend. I didn't know anybody else. And it was so refreshing. Like, it was so immediately refreshing with just normal people. It was a great hangout. It was great conversation. It was caring conversation. It wasn't just people on their phones in the green room going to do a thing together and then, being isolated in the corners. It was super attractive to me in that. And so I think that culture has been established a long time. So if somebody comes into our team and doesn't gel with that, is really closed off, or has a performance complex of like, I'm the most important thing in this room, I want the spotlight, it's really evident. It's really, really evident. And part of that is because our team does a lot. I've been here 8 months now leading our team, and I continue to hear about things pop up where it's like, oh, sweet, all you guys were hanging out last night, like all of our vocalists or whatever, or all the females on the team went and celebrated a birthday down at their local karaoke bar, or whatever. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's so good. There's things. And so we just continue to try to foster that. I think our team's really great at that. They're full of relational people because of the foundations that Robbie was talking about. I think now what we're finding is you have multiple campuses, and we don't have 1,000 musicians to support all those campuses. You start trading, like, hey, I need a keys player. And so a keys player from one campus goes and plays at the other one that weekend. And you share musicians, which is great. And that's how we support each other. I think what can happen, the danger of that, is that person loses a connection to their community on some level. As a worship pastor, we lose connection with them and eyes on them to say, oh man, I haven't seen them in 6 weeks, so I haven't checked up on them. I forgot about that because they've been at Eastside or at Uptown or whatever, another site. Now we're trying to get better about going, hey, you are a part of this campus's community. You still may go play and support another place. I'm your pastor. I want to help you. I want to know your family. I want to know you well. And so some things outside of the weekend can happen there, whether it's one-on-ones or just team nights. We just did a team hangout night maybe 2 months ago, and it was just great. It was like spouses and everybody, just come. We're going to grill out and we're going to have a great time and not talk about a weekend. And so those things are starting to happen as well, more and more, and trying to foster that. But I want our team to know I'm cared for by these 15 people. I'm known by them. I'm not just walking on a stage and seen by other people. I'm known here in this site, this community.
That's really good. And Robbie, what were some of the things that you did to foster that healthy environment that, Justin walks into and goes, wow, this is so like healthy and people are like having authentic, real dialogue with each other. How did you get it there?
I think I would love to say because I'm just great at this, but but the reality is that I came into an ecosystem that is to a fault brutally honest. We say we have 7 hills that we die on because there are 7 hills of Cincinnati, and the first one is authenticity. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. So anybody who's on stage will just be the same person when they're off the stage. And it's amazing, by lifting that yoke off of people, that you're expected to be something bigger, better, more perfect than you are. What that does, like, that instantly is freedom. And I'll tell you this, there was a book that just ripped through our staff and then ripped through our community probably 7 years ago. It's a book called Spiritual Slavery to Spiritual Sonship. It addresses what the author calls the orphan heart. And so this idea, especially as worship leaders or musicians or performers, there's a sense of like an orphan wanting to get adopted, and an orphan going, what can I do to get noticed so someone will take me home and make me part of their family? You know, what we know from Scripture is that the Lord says, it's me, I adopt you. You don't need to perform anymore. And so I stepped into a culture that said, we don't need you to do anything. We just want you to be a part of our thing. We want you to be a part of our community. So I feel like the Lord taught me a lot, and I would encourage everybody to go get that book. It's really, I think it's still on Amazon. And if you don't cry or the Lord doesn't use it, then you might be a robot. I'm not sure.
And the author's name is Jack Frost. So how could you go wrong with that? You know?
Nice. That's awesome. Hey, one of the things I did want to ask you guys, because you're talking a lot of leadership principles and a lot of just like, I'm sure a lot of these things you've learned through trial and error and over many years, which is like the best teacher. But what other things do you do to learn some of these principles? Do you read books? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you take courses? How are you guys growing to stay ahead of your team so that you can actually lead them?
I think for me, the thing right now that I'm thankful I can do, I guess, but is I'm just observing other leaders in our church. And so their team dynamics may be vastly different than mine. They may lead a team of 50 when I lead a team of 15, or they may lead a team of 3. I'm trying to get sort of one-on-ones with them and just watching them. How are you developing that? For our music team, it's like, man, we want diversity to be seen from our stage because we want our stage to look like the kingdom of God. We want as many people as possible to walk in on a weekend and see themselves on stage, to go, oh, that's me. I belong here. I'm seen now. Well, I can look at other teams in our church and the leaders there and go pick their brain and observe their behaviors and their coaching techniques and how they're opening their lives to their team and things like that. And just being eyes wide open when I'm around them and learning from them,
Mm-hmm. That's good. I want to ask one more question about your teams, and then I'd like to talk about your service logistics. Like, what are all the things that go into making a service happen? So the last question about teams would be, you have multiple campuses, right? And you have a 150 person room and a 3,500 person room. Like, how much does the music vary between the different campuses, both in style and quality?
Great question. This is another one of these things where we have... we've done something and then we've changed. If you had checked in with us 5 years ago, we had, I would say, a model that was high control, low accountability. Meaning, at the time, Central Services makes the set list, Central Services makes the session, and we ship it out to you. You modify keys, but all of that is Central controlled what happened at the site, and you were just responsible at the site level to execute it well. Now, the pendulum has swung the other way to lower control and high accountability. So when I say low control, I mean low control over what it is that you do, but high accountability, meaning if we were clear on the intent, how were you at executing that intent, right? So what that's looked like for the last couple of years is a quarterly songbook. And so that we just have a spreadsheet that has tabs on the bottom and it says 2019 Q1, 2019 Q2. There's a list of about, 22 songs for that quarter. They're listed by name, tempo, the version that we're pulling from, like here's the one that we're referencing. And then they're all color-coded, like, hey, here are songs that have been in rotation for a long time. here are songs that are brand new. And then there's also another section that's like, these are the songs you need to introduce this quarter. And here's a list, here's a couple more songs that like are probably coming next quarter. And these are songs that are going away, so we're not going to play those songs anymore now. So what it does is it sort of narrows the bandwidth a little bit and allows us to do a couple things. Like, I want to make sure that we're always singing songs that tell the whole story of the gospel, right? Like, God loves man, man sins, man needs a savior, Jesus comes and restores relationship. We need those because we sing our theology, right? And if we're saying not just a better life that Jesus offers, he offers the way, then man, that better be represented in our songs. We want to make sure that we're singing songs that are about God. More songs about God, less songs about us. Like, these are just worship songs. Doesn't matter how we feel about it. We're just singing to you because you're worthy, because you are on top, and I am serving you. I lower myself. And then songs of petition. There's tons of types of songs, but we want a balance of those things so that we're constantly, one, acknowledging our theology, acknowledging our mission, and then acknowledging our voice. Like, here are things that Crossroads says, and that kind of gets us into, that's why we write stuff. That's why we write, because there are things about our mission that we feel called to do as Crossroads Church that doesn't get expressed in other songs that we hear around. So let's make our own anthem for us. Great, we'll make those things.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the new song you guys wrote recently at the end. So you pick the songs then, Robbie? Like, are you the one who says, I'm the gatekeeper, I'm selecting these 25, 22 songs that we're going to do this quarter?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, to be really honest, we use Slack. I don't know if you're familiar with Slack, but we use Slack, and all the worship leaders are in our have a Slack channel. One is called New Songs, and I say, hey guys, throw songs in there that you're willing to bleed for. Meaning, this says something that our community needs to say, and you'll fight me for it. Because there's so much music out there. I don't have the capacity to filter through it all, and so our worship leaders will throw songs in there, and we'll listen to them, and I'll make the call.
I should join your New Song Slack channel and just steal good songs that your worship leaders find.
You're welcome to. I'll add you after this.
Oh my gosh. We use an app called Band. We tried Slack, but Band had a lot more like community features. We're really enjoying Band, and so if our listeners want to look into either of those apps, that would be cool. Yeah, because like Band allows you to do polls. It allows you to do like RSVPs, events, and I mean, I know Slack can like integrate all that stuff, and then there's comments. It's totally different format. It's almost like a Facebook group, and I've created like 12 different groups, like one for the guitarists, one for the drummers, one for the whatever, and then the main sanctuary team and the kids team and the high school team, and so we're figuring that out, and then we have like one group that's a catch-all for like everybody. It's called All Worship, and like even the people that I got their information yesterday, I was like, here, join the All Worship group. Even though you're not serving anywhere, be involved in our community and, start to learn from us, so
that's awesome.
We've enjoyed Band a lot in terms of like community building and communication.
That's
so
really good.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So you select the songs for the worship leaders. What does it look like for you guys leading up to a service? Actually, I have a question before that. Are the worship leaders of your campuses, are they volunteers, are they paid staff, or are they like contracted? How does that work?
The majority of them are staff. And then we have, at some of our smaller campuses, we have contract worship leaders. So they're folks who are, bought in. Honestly, it's like they're staff folks. In heart. We don't have the budget to hire them full time. In every case of a contractor, I would say that if we had the budget, it would be great to have them. We would benefit from having them full time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is it one worship leader per campus, or are there a couple?
There is one.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So leading up to that, they have this list of songs. They get to pick whatever songs from that list they want in whatever order they want. Obviously, you're giving training and teaching on how to build a good set and all that stuff. But leading up to a service, what does it look like? Do you guys have a midweek rehearsal? Is it show up and play? Are you having meetings with the tech team to kind of make sure the tech is on, point? Like, how does that all look?
I'll take this, and then Justin, you might be able to speak specifically at the site level.
Sure.
We work a number of weeks out on a series. We work in 3 to 6 week series. And so we just finished one called People Skills, and that was a 6-week series. The next series we're in is called The End. It's talking about end times. And that series is already planned for the next 3 weeks. And we're almost all the way done with the next series called Spark, which will get us through the summer. So there is we call it studio time. It ideates and then it filters down those ideas into deliverables. And so for every deliverable that's going to make it into a weekend, every deliverable gets a creative brief and a strategy brief, meaning here's what this piece is intended to do. It's a story about life change. The strategy brief is we want to show someone who is our target demographic, we call Wayne, and we want to show him and his life change because he was in community with people up to his baptism. The creative brief will say, we want to show him, and it's like the look, tone, feel. And that gets sent out to the video team or to a contract video team to go create that asset. And that's being made sometimes 2 weeks out, sometimes 4 weeks out. In worst case scenario, it's happening right now for this coming weekend, right? All those pieces are coming together on a Friday. So like this Friday, we will talk about 2 weekends from now, a team of department heads. So technical, music, our service producer, will all get together and we'll talk about all the elements to make sure, like, hey, do we have the deliverables? Where are they? Are they in the right place? And we put them into planning.center, into a generic, non-site specific outline. And we call it the WOMP, the weapon of mass production. And the WOMP is where any site can go like a couple weeks down the road and go, what's happening this weekend or next weekend or 3 weeks down? They can see sort of a skeleton. And we'll put links. We use a software called Frame.io, and that allows video assets to be seen by anybody with a link. Kind of like a private YouTube thing, but it exports right out of Final Cut. So video assets and demos of music are all in there. And that's where we firm up our outline for the following week. We go through the weekend. On Tuesday, everybody jumps on a conference call. So we use a service called Zoom, and we have these little owl cameras that are like, I don't know, they're a foot tall. The camera is 360. So every producer, every worship leader, whoever else wants to jump on, gets on that call. And it's not a decision making, it's just an information sharing. We're talking through the whole production meeting. Our planning.center outline shows like the element. It shows who's doing it at the time, but we also created another column in there called intent. What is the intent of this song? What is the intent of this piece, this creative element? So that if they get to the room of 150 and they can't execute it exactly right, they go, oh, but the intent was to make people laugh. Okay, how do we tweak this and change it, but maintain the intent? And every weekend, we have what we call soft points and hard points. Soft point would be the worship set, right? You do what you want to do with the worship set, and the intent is transcendent experience with God. There may be a hard point where, hey, we're talking about this in the message. The hard point going out to every campus is to play this song before the teaching. And so that's non-negotiable. You have to do the hard point. And I would say there's a hard point every other week of something that has to happen. So from there, that information gets disseminated on Tuesday, and they've got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night rehearsal. And then after Thursday night rehearsal, we record that. It goes up to planning.center. Lights get cued on Friday. TDs, our technical directors, populate lyrics in their presentation software for the arrangements of the songs that they're doing at that site. And then every site does a full run through. Justin, why don't you talk about the run through?
Yeah, so Saturday we come in at my site. We have first services at 4:30. So we come in as a band. We do a production meeting at 12:30, and we walk through every element of the service with kind of all the sound, lighting, video with our producer and myself. And just to see all the assets that are coming for the weekend, if I'm setting up a video or coming out of a video, we just talk through those transitions. We can see them together. That happens at 12:30. At 1:30, our band comes in, and that's the start of basically a sound check. We play every song through. We do ear checks and make sure our monitors are good. And then at 2 p.m., everybody who's involved at that site in the service. So all of our camera operators, lyrics volunteers, anybody that's on the team that weekend is there at 2 p.m. We do a full production meeting, talk through the service. And then at 2:20, we do a full run through top to bottom of the service. And that was new for me when I came in. So it's everything. We want to do at that 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. or whatever. We want to do top to bottom the service as if the room is filled with people, and so that we can help each other, so that we can make sure, hey, that worked really well. That's going to be great. Or, oh, that didn't work well. How could we tweak that? And we sort of iron out as many kinks as possible. That way, when the room fills with people, we've got a space that's, I think, maximized for them to have a great encounter with each other, encounter with God. We have a team of people, maybe 3 to 5, that's from like a content standpoint. And me as a worship leader, they're going to help me with, hey, I want to teach this song. I want to share this scripture and share some meaning in this song. They're going to help me craft that. So they're listening to me during that run through, and then they're giving me feedback on the spot. Hey, what if you said it like this? This weekend, we had a powerful moment at all of our sites that was a hard point. Well, that run through was super important because we wanted to really get that hard point nailed down, because we were asking people to define a moment, to identify a moment in their life. Where do you need God to show up right here, right now? Well, me as the person who's communicating that, I want to be sure that that's as clear as possible, and that I say what I need to say and then get out of the way and allow them to talk to God in that moment, allow there to be clarity and a powerful experience. Well, that team was there to help. So we run through everything, our announcements, whatever it may be, everything's run through top to bottom on Saturday before we ever start a service. Then we do another debrief right after that with everybody on the team saying what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to tweak. Our teachers go through that. There's 1 to 2 people there every time during the run through that hears the entire message as it's supposed to be delivered, and then gives feedback in the debrief meeting. And we do a debrief meeting 3 times on Saturday for us at our campus. So after the full run through, we do a debrief. Then we do service at 4:30. In between services, we do another debrief. And after our last service at the end of the night, we do another debrief going into Sunday, so that we're all on the same page and we're making sure, man, that's capturing the intent that we felt God was leading us to in the first place.
Yeah, I love that, because I think some people will be like, gosh, there's like no room for the Spirit to move. Like you guys are like scripting him out. But I would say, no, you guys are being intentional. You're being good stewards of the moment of time that God has allotted to you to communicate what you believe he's calling you to communicate to the people. And you're trying to do that the best that you can. And so I think that's right. Yeah. And so just for anyone who's kind of like scoffing at the amount of attention to detail, the Spirit doesn't have room to move. Well, yes, he does, because they're taking this moment and they're crafting it to the best of their abilities, and they want to seek to continually get better, and so I think that's rad.
And I mentioned it felt foreign to me when I first came in. I had been through run-throughs and things like that, but the thing for me, the huge value to me is I get to get feedback from 2 to 3 other Spirit-led, deep followers of Jesus who just heard what I said or felt the song that we just did and felt that moment, and they've got the Holy Spirit inside of them. So now I get 3 or 4 people who are in the Spirit going, hey, what about this? And we have incredible talents on the team, so I don't need to be the only person crafting that. Man, I want to learn. This weekend with that moment, when I first started in the run through, that moment was like 4 minutes, and it felt like, I feel like I'm losing some of the punch on that I need to have for that moment. And one of our communicators was like, hey, what if you did this? Boom. And 90 seconds came off of that, not to save time. We didn't need 90 seconds back in our service, but to capture the sit and then get off of it. Say it directly so that it's powerful in that moment. And that was super helpful for me. And I know they're doing it with a worshipful heart. They're doing it out of love. It never feels inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like when we're in the run through,
or gimmicky.
I'm seeing our teachers hands raised in an empty room worshiping. I'm seeing our producers hands raised worshiping during the run through. It's not manufactured. It's very, very genuine, very intentional, and we all do it. So I can speak into the message, and the person giving the message speaks into a song, and the person doing lighting speaks into music, and I say, hey, that lighting felt weird. Man, that's super open-handed. It's really healthy behavior for what we're doing.
Yeah, man, because I think people can get really cynical towards like very large churches and be like, oh, it's all just a program, it's all scripted. And it's like, our church, we're a Calvary Chapel, and it's way less like structured than you guys are, less polished and produced. But we're a very large church, and I can tell you there's nothing to be cynical about. Like, and what you're saying is like, these people love the Lord. It's real, it's authentic, it's from their heart. They're just trying to keep doing better and making things better, not for their own glory, but so that they can, glorify God and impact people more effectively. So I love hearing that. So how many services are you guys running? Let's just pick your like largest campus or two. Like, how many services do you do a weekend?
At our Oakley campus, which is also our broadcast campus. So what everything's Justin's talking about in that run through and everything, that doubles, that goes for what you see online. So we're producing 2 events in one moment. So the in-room experience and the online experience, they end up becoming different. Our Oakley campus does 2 services on Saturday and just switched to 2 services on Sunday. We used to do 3 services on Sunday. And so there's a run through plus 2 on Saturday, and now there's 2 on Sunday. And I believe our Mason campus, which is about 25 minutes north, does 1 service on Saturday and 2 on Sunday.
And you said you guys do a Thursday night rehearsal as well?
Yeah, we do a Thursday night rehearsal. And so the expectation is that Thursday night, it's a rehearsal. It's not a practice.
Right.
So you've already, and the difference being, a practice is like you're learning a song, and a rehearsal is like, no, we're just putting it together. And so people come knowing their stuff. So our rehearsals typically last an hour and a half. You might play a song 4 times, once to get your ears and parts, a second to adjust parts, the 3rd time for the front of house guy now for everybody's good, and then a 4th time to track it. And we track every rehearsal and upload it as a item into that specific outline. So once everybody gets in their cars, they're encouraged to listen to it. And
yeah. So that's a Thursday night rehearsal, and then Saturday you run through the songs, sound check you call it, but you play all the songs, and then you do a full service run through, so you play through the songs again. So before you even hit service, they've played through the songs like at least 4 times each, and yeah, it's probably sounding really great by then.
You'd think so.
Yeah. So. Do you guys use backing tracks?
We use Ableton to support what we do. And so we don't have separate MDs at our sites. So we don't have separate music directors. In almost every situation, the worship leader is also the music director. And so the Ableton rig is in the back. And, I think we use multi-tracks and Loop Community for stuff when we need it, if it's not stuff that we made. It's a cool thing for smaller sites, to be able to go, oh, sweet, I have this resource to listen to, and then to augment what we're doing. The goal is, I don't ever want us to become slaves to Ableton. Ableton's a tool for us. Ableton shouldn't be the leader. And so always encourage folks to like ditch it if you want to, like shut it down and just take over if you need to lead that moment.
Yeah, I'm kind of like not morally opposed to tracks, but like I want my team to be able to execute. And like I know there are certain like little teeny nuanced things like impacts and like uplifters and all that you can add as ear candy, but I'm honestly I'm trying to get my team to be able to do it without any tracks. Like we use an SPDSX like drum trigger thing, and like we have a percussionist playing and doing the uplifters and the impacts and the sub drops, and I would love
what's an uplifter and a
so it's
what
like
are those things?
Uplifters like or
cool.
Or an impact is like that, like big reverb, boom, boof, that you hit at the big moments, and a downlifter is like the pew that launches you into the chorus. So I'm trying, to bring this professional studio quality with just volunteers, and sometimes like depending on the volunteer, some of them are better and some of them are worse at doing it. But some of my team members are like, we should try tracks. And I'm like, no, because if we do, then you'll never learn to be able to like pull it off yourself, So anyway, I like to hear what other people do. And then maybe one day, Because you know what we've been doing? I music direct. I'm the worship leader most of the time, at least Sunday mornings, and I music direct. But then I have a guy with a microphone who he music directs when I'm leading. So he repeats what I said, like, sub drop on 4, or like, break or bring it down, or, any weird tricky counts or anything like that. And so I don't know if you guys have a MD mic that you guys use when, like Justin, when you're leading worship, you're the MD, but you need someone, but maybe your team they remember everything. So, or maybe Ableton cues everybody in. So how does that work, I guess?
We each, I think it's normal at all of our sites for our worship leader to have what we call a panic button, and it's just a foot pedal, which can turn my wired mic, that I'm leading from, into that, to be able to speak into the only to our musicians on stage, into our ears. It also lets me speak into our graphics person and things like that. So if we were ever to abandon tracks and go, hey, we're going to repeat a chorus, well, our lyrics person hears those cues as well. Super, super helpful. And again, that was a new tool for me. I was used to having another MD in the band having that. And sometimes, like at our campus right now, we have 2 of those mics. So our drummer has one and I have one. Therefore, if there are moments where I'm singing and there needs to be a change or something like that, there's another person that can speak into that. But it obviously has to be a person who gets what we're doing, a trained person, a person who's not just going to make jokes on the mic.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Shut up.
Yeah. Yes. You speak like you have experience with that. Yeah. One last question, and then I want to talk a little bit about your songwriting. This is just a question that I like to ask and learn from. But in your ministry, what are some of the problems, like the biggest issues that you're facing right now? And what are you doing to kind of address those issues and overcome them?
That's a great question, Alex. I think there's, from my standpoint, is the leadership pipeline. There's no shortage of talented people, but the moment when a talented person needs to fall under authority, that's when you see like what someone's character is. And so the idea of people leading our community for the purposes of getting God as much glory as they possibly can, that takes deep character. And so, this is total confession. I led worship for a lot of years, and I was skimming glory for myself. I was doing it because it was feeding something unhealthy in me. I've dealt with the Lord. I continue to deal with the Lord on that. I'm constantly aware of that in me. And so as we look for folks to lead our community, the constant thing I'm looking on the horizon, I'm looking in our ranks, who are the people who have both the character and the competence to be the stewards of this moment? That's a big deal.
That's really good. I love that every ministry, like every leader who cares about their ministry, like is just always righteously unsatisfied with something, We all have like, there's something in my ministry that I want to be different and better. And so for the listeners listening, just like be encouraged. I remember Aaron Ivey said on one of the episodes we did, he said that discouragement is the undercurrent of leadership. And it's just always a part of your life. And because you want it to be better. And that has brought me so much comfort. It's like, we're not where we need to be yet. But this is normal to feel like this. So, okay, I want to talk about, because you guys sound super busy. So my first question is, with the madness of your church and running so fast, when do you find time to songwrite? Because now we want to talk about this new song you just wrote. Like, what does writing look like for you guys? Who's writing? When do you write? How do you write? All that.
Well, so super nitty gritty. So we'll just go to nitty gritty.
Yeah, go ahead.
We changed people's job descriptions. So worship leaders' job descriptions don't include writing songs. So if someone wants to write songs, they're doing that and they're opting in to do it on their own time. We tend to not count hours and just look at the workload and go, are things getting done well? Great. If they are, fantastic. There are times when we run really hard and other times when we play super hard. So We recognize there's this bandwidth. But we took it out of people's job descriptions specifically so that it made more clear the issue of intellectual property, right? So when someone writes a song, if they write a song, it's their song. And if our church's publishing company wants to engage in that, then we can do that, and it's not a who owns what sort of thing. So we had to do that, and we wanted to do that to make it clear, like, you don't have to write songs, and not all worship leaders are songwriters, and not all songwriters are worship leaders, So we try to do a full writing day, and the invitation is open to all of the people on staff and all of our contractors, and even some of our key volunteers come and write every other month. And that's usually a full day of getting together, breaking up into groups and writing songs together and coming back and playing them for each other and giving feedback and retooling them. Then we also do a couple other things where we're more intentional with the people who, I don't know who said this, but they said, are you a songwriter? And somebody said, yeah. Like, well, is it in your calendar? Nope. Well, then you're not a songwriter, And I think one of our songwriters, Austin, was told that by another a legit songwriter, and so Austin has it in his calendar, like he writes and like it's his job, but it's technically not his job. So we have other sessions where we pull together people who are just prolific, and we say, great, let's let you run, and we'll invest in you running. There are a lot of great songs, and we need more songs in the world? I think some people would say, like, no, there's plenty of songs, we don't need any more songs. But if somebody said, you can't pray any new prayer, I would be like, oh no, but what about tomorrow? Please, can I pray another prayer tomorrow? And so the idea of us writing songs in our community do a couple of things. They speak to what we believe about God, speaks to what God has called Crossroads to, and how we talk. We say we're a church for folks who have given up on church, but not necessarily on God. And so maybe that means we say things a little bit differently, and sometimes we do. And so that's what making new songs for us does. This one in particular, it came out of a really rough season for us. There have been a few staff members who have been battling cancer. One of them, her name is Kathy Beecham. She passed away. She led all of our community pastors. She oversaw all of them. And she was an amazing leader, an amazing woman. And she died fast and sudden, and we were heartbroken. And then we had a songwriting day on a Monday, everybody's day off for the most part, and we got together and got an email saying, hey, executive pastor, his name's Darren. Darren was just admitted into the hospital. He had a massive heart attack, 99% blockage. Pray. This is urgent. So we were getting together to write, and Justin, Austin, Living Good, and myself were all sitting in my family room, and Austin was like, we need to pray for a breakthrough. Like, God, we need you in our mess. Come help us. And he had this line that says, God of the breakthrough, your promises stand true. You haven't failed us yet. And that was like, you've got a nail up to the wall and you're trying to nail it in. You're looking for the tool, like you want a hammer. And that song was the hammer for us right then. We're like, that's the prayer I need to pray today. That's my hammer. Let's hit it hard, and that's what spawned that for us.
That's good. Yeah, I actually, in preparing for this interview, wanted to research the church a little bit. So I watched service on Saturday. I went to your website and it was like, watch live. So I clicked watch live, and Justin was leading, and I saw the moment that he's talking about where he's like, take out your phone and let's sing this song of breakthrough. How's the church been responding to the song?
Yeah, great. We do a thing called daily worship, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday in the mornings on Facebook, and do it live at 8:30 a.m. Just 15 to 20 minutes of worship. We've played the song there. A couple of us have at different times, and you can see, we just would immediately see people's comments of being drawn to that, sort of the desperation of those lyrics and that prayer. I think it resonates in a deep place, honestly, with humanity. I mean, that is what the psalmist cried out in that searching for God. And so this past weekend, it was a hard point, like Robbie mentioned those. It was a hard point at all of our sites. And I know for me in our space, multiple people immediately drawn. This was the first time for 95, 98, 99% of our community to hear those words. And by that, we taught the chorus 2 times before we jumped in the song. By the second chorus of that, they're singing. Well, that's a sign of, not only do I agree with the lyric, but the melody's approachable, like all those things. And that's when I think the song can get out of the way and there's a deep prayer that's happening, a deep conversation,
That's rad. Good job, you guys. This has been super helpful for me, and I'm sure the listeners too. Is there anything else you want to say, or tell us where we can keep up with either of you guys online? And I'll also link to the song like on iTunes and Spotify and all that. I guess Apple Music now. But yeah.
You can follow us, CRDS Music on Instagram, crdsmusic.com. Justin doesn't do any social media, so you'll never find him anywhere. He's got a couple fake names.
Good job, dude. Is that sarcasm?
You'll never know them.
No, he really doesn't do it. He doesn't do a darn thing.
Good job.
It's fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you guys can join us if you jump on our church Facebook page at 8:30 in the morning. If you want to worship with us, it'd be great to have you join us. We do that. One of us leads every weekday, and man, I'll tell you what. Just our job as the church is to get God as much glory as we can by whatever means necessary. So if that means a guitar becomes a limiter for me and you and everybody getting God more glory, then I will take it. We need to be willing to take it off. What is the thing that's going to get God more glory? Because that's our job. When we got saved, we joined the family business, and the family business is glorifying God. I don't want to train people to be a better Crossroads member. I don't want to train people to be a better American Christian. We need to be training, and I'm not saying we're not doing this, but this is just a reminder to me that like we're training people to be light bulbs for God. That we should, anywhere we go, writing the biggest grace checks, the biggest truth checks, because we're connected to the source of grace, the source of truth. Thanks for having us on and letting us ramble.
No, it's been rad. It's been
really
awesome.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. All right, well, that's it for today. Please let me know if you liked that format. Shoot me an email, alex@worshipministrytraining.com. Let me know if you'd like to hear other churches. And yeah, hope you were helped. And I will be back next month on the 1st of the month with another practical episode.
Nowhere else to go, we've nowhere else to turn. We're kneeling at your door, singing, come near, come here. We need your kingdom now. Exchange it for our doubt. We're kneeling at your door, singing, come near, come here, come near, come here. Come near, God of the breakthrough, your promises stand true. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. Miracle maker, our hope and our Savior. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. You've shown us you've etched it on our hearts, so we're crying out for more, singing, come near, come here. So pour your spirit down as our praises rising now. We're crying out for more, singing, come near, come here, come near, come here, God, come near. God of the breakthrough, your promises stand true. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. Our miracle maker, our hope and our Savior. You haven't failed shown us who you are. Oh, you've etched it on our hearts, so we're crying out for more, singing, come near, come here. So pour your spirit down as our praises rise now. We're crying out for more, we're singing, come near, come here, God, come near, come here, Lord, come near. Out of the breakthrough, your promise to stand true. You haven't failed us yet, no, you haven't failed us yet. Our miracle maker, our hope and our Savior. You haven't failed us yet, you haven't failed us yet. Out of the breakthrough, your promise to stand true. You haven't failed us yet, Lord, you haven't failed us yet. Our miracle maker, our hope and our Savior. You haven't failed us yet, you haven't failed us yet, you haven't failed us yet, you haven't failed us yet. We've nowhere else to go, we've nowhere else to turn. We're kneeling at your door, singing, come near, come here.